Neville Goddard, The Power of Unlimited Imagination, Chapter 5, Righteousness. We are back to this book for the rest of the readings of the chapters. Righteousness, what a wonderful subject. Here we go. If you have an objective and fail to achieve it, you have sinned, for you have fallen short of your desire. But if you have no desire, you are incapable of sinning. If you have no desire, you are incapable of sinning. The righteous man, however, being conscious of already having fulfilled his objective, cannot sin. Wow. In the book of Daniel, we are told to break off your sin by righteousness. This has nothing to do with any church or ritual, for righteousness is right thinking. In the book of Genesis, the story is told of Jacob's desire to increase his wealth. Lifting his eyes in a dream, he beheld the spotted lambs, the ring-striped goats, and cattle. Then he said, I will hold unto my righteousness and not let it go. So shall my righteousness answer for me in time to come. Follow Jacob's example. Lift up your eyes with a controlled imagination and see what you want to see. Believe in your vision, and your faith will make it solid and real in your manifested world. While sitting in your chair, you can assume the state of consciousness you desire to possess, even though your reason and outer senses deny its reality. That's just sitting in your chair. Then, as Jacob, you can say, remember, this is all a tiny, tiny bit of initiative. You don't need a lot of initiative here. Then as Jacob, you can say, my righteousness shall answer for me in time to come. Jacob knew that he could not become perverse and turn from the new state, but that if he maintained a consciousness of having what reason denied, including the law of genetics, he would achieve his goal. God the Father is not a man, but the dominant idea that you serve. We must give this a visual assistance here. God, all that is, I am right here. Inside of that idea is our self-concepts. Many, many, many of them. This whole globe of consciousness has taken on a new shape. It's not so circular, it's in motion now. See that? Your current self-concept is here. The concept and the idea you want to focus on is here, okay? So, let's repeat this. Wonderful, wonderful piece. God the Father is not a man, but the dominant idea that you serve. The dominant idea that's within you is the desire that you're trying to make a subconscious impression of and keep the focus. God the Father is not a man, but the dominant idea you serve. Sinning is not hitting the mark, not making the impression into your subconscious. That's sinning because you're not even aware. And then if you're not aware of it because you're just in the world and you're focused on everything on the outside, you're not even aware of sinning. Righteousness is knowing what to do and not doing it intentionally. Doing it unconsciously is not sinning because you're just doing. You're in the habit. You're in the habit and the loop of letting the outside fill in your subconscious impressions. And you don't even have an idea of this. The enemies of that idea, okay, God the Father is not a man, but the dominant idea that you serve. The enemies of that idea are those of your own household, your own thinking, your own households right here. Hold a dominant idea in your consciousness, and in a way you do not know, your righteousness, right thinking in parentheses, will cause the desired state to externalize itself in your world. And Neville's repeating and repeating and repeating and repeating, but don't we need the repetition? I don't know about you, but me, I needed repetition and repetition and repetition. I mean, to get where I am sitting right in front of you now is 33 years. The last 3 have been full-time, straight Neville and only Neville. Lectures, reading, studying, lectures, reading, studying, applying, lectures, reading, A lot of failures in this 3 years. A lot of failures, falling flat on my face. It is not, for me, I can only speak for me. It hasn't been easy. It's been a heck of a thing. But I knew how valid it was when I saw my the first two videos on YouTube was of a student of Neville's. Elmer Locker is his name. And it's the grandfather of the YouTube channel. But his two videos is what I want to talk about. They woke me up. They woke me up from where I was. I was in. Okay, let me talk about, and I'm going to make a video about this, but if that was 3 years ago, that those two videos woke me up. Before that was 2 consistent years of nothing but Ho'oponopono. Okay, so that's 5 years running I'm talking about right now. Before that, that would be, excuse me, that would be 29 years running, 25 of which I spent with my teacher, the first 25, then the 4 years without my teacher before I discovered Ho'oponopono. But the first 25 years was trying to apply everything Seth taught. You create your own reality by your thoughts, beliefs, and emotions. I was at it. I got to a point where I was really good at it. I gave classes. I had meetups. I mean, I still struggled. It just didn't seem to actually fit the right. I don't know what was going on, but a lot of things fell into great place. I mean, you know, I'll make a separate video, but the ideas were, you know, we started a business from those ideas of the Seth material. You create your own reality. We bought a house. We've done a lot of things. We got married in Hawaii. All these wonderful things came about from what I knew from then, but it still didn't complete I didn't master it yet. Again, 25 years with my teacher, mainly focused on Seth and some other metaphysical stuff I'll talk about later in my video. And then 4 years, she leaves the party, then 4 years without her, I'm still juggling those ideas. Ho'oponopono, then Neville. That's 3 years of hardcore studying, and I'm not joking. When I do it all the way. So this process hasn't been easy for me because I've had to convince quite a self to change self-concept. That self was running in a certain path with certain habits, and those habits ran deep, and I didn't know how deep because I tried to change them, thought they would just change instantly. I can just change. Can't I just change? Can't I just fall asleep with my new relationship on my mind, and all of a sudden I'm going to wake up in a relationship? Okay, give it a shot. Go for it. See if you succeed. You have to try. I'm coming at you with 33 years of this, and I feel like this is the cherry on the sundae. Why I'm coming here to share with you is because this is where the cherry finally hit the top of the sundae. It's been difficult, even coming from my perspective. So I want to tell you, you need to be persistent, hang in there, just gain a knowledge in here of what your desire is. That's the main first thing. Then start steering everything towards that desire. Everything you're doing, everything you're thinking, everything should be starting to focus on that desire. I'm trying to bring wisdom from a long haul of finding out ways to fail. And believe me, there's a lot of wonderful distractions that can pull you away from your desired goal. And especially not having a desired goal is a large part of where I came from. So I'm going to put a separate video together about my path, but we do see and hear Neville repeating consistently the same thing. And there's a reason, because we need to hear it. We need to apply it. And if we're not applying it, we need to hear it again. And we need to not just be hearers, but doers. And if we're not, you can tell what he was up against because nobody was, excuse me, I don't like to make that kind of judgment. He probably was faced with a lot of non-doers. And a lot of people that would go to the lecture, probably like people like I used to as a kid, go to church and hear this wonderful talk, but then we would leave church and not apply any of that. It would just be back to, with my brothers and sisters, fighting and arguing and trying to play with the toy that someone else wanted, and back to the arguing. Then come back for 1 hour a week and then hear this wonderful talk and never do anything about it. We need to be doers, not just hearers. So I admire you if you're still listening to these videos because they are a valuable, valuable knowledge set a set of knowledge that you can use to change for the better. Big time. So, little commercial for hanging in there and listening to Neville say over and over to be persistent. And its value is, it should ripen in your ears because it is very, very good. It will work for you very, very wonderfully. So here we go. Let's continue. A Pharisee is one who conforms to all man-made laws, one who strictly observes the Levitical law of outer purification. Now we are told, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. But seek ye first the kingdom of heaven and its righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. True righteousness is consciousness. We confuse the word and seek righteousness as a thing, but the consciousness of being is the magnet that draws a thing to it. Very, very powerful sentence. Permeate your consciousness with the feeling of being the man or woman you want to be, and your righteousness will bring it about. As a review, you remember, right? We have the law of consciousness, the law of assumption, which everything is consciousness, but the law of assumption is when you take an idea or desire or urge and you make the impression onto your subconscious, your subjective self, you make that impression and it objectifies into a reality, which is your new 3D reality. You go from your old self to your new self and you kill the old man. This one dies. I kill and I make alive. You have to make that impression so that can happen. If you do not make this impression and you're not even aware of this knowledge and you're just blindly following, you're letting the world fill your subconscious with impressions. Those impressions are objectified in your reality. You're in this loop of going from one idea to another that's not your idea. So you get caught in this loop. You get caught in this loop and you never get an idea of what your own desire could be or should be or what your own dream is. I brought all that up about my experience because I have fallen into a lot of these holes, these, whatever you call them, potholes. It's like, there can be some deep potholes. What do you see those in Australia? The freshwater pearls where they mine in the ground? I think it's that, or some diamond mines are just huge, cavernous. You can see a plane and then you see that they're doing mining and then you don't know if you drive or walk, you could fall into a massive hole. That's exactly what I'm talking about. There's a lot of potholes in this experience, and if you just take these instructions for the simple form they are. Number one, I and my Father are one. My Father is greater than I. So anything you're going to try and do here with the law of assumption is going to involve you taking it for granted that you have a source behind you. You have something that has your back. You are never alone. You are never, never alone. As I mentioned before, I felt alone the whole time until I read the Magus of Strovolos. Daskalos, the Magus of Strovolos. Until I read that one book, I thought I was completely alone the whole time. Then I read other books similar, and we'll get into that library stuff later, but I just knew when I read that book that there was another person that is doing something I was desirous of doing, but didn't know that it was possible at all. And then getting involved with this Neville material, knowing that there's something, well, let me give credit where it's due with my teacher. She taught me this whole picture, and she said that's all that is. And that's what we learned about through the Seth material. And so all these are probable versions of you. In my house are many mansions, the way Neville says it, but it's the same thing. But knowing first that something has your back, that you're part of something greater, this is the first objective. Because once you know that, then it's easy to go into your I am meditation and seek the answer of what is it that I would love to do? What is it that makes me happy? Close your eyes from the senses and ask the question. Get the answer. That's not going to take you long. It can be instant. Once you have the desire, no matter how tiny it seems, it's your desire. Once you have it, you can start building up, you can start bolstering that idea, that desire. Then you start making these impressions. Every thought is an impression. You start making these impressions. Before you know it, you're going to be halfway to this objective. Before you know it, you're going to be this objective. And it doesn't matter how big or small this desire is. Only you can impress your subconscious. If you let the world do it, we already talked about, that's just a loop. That's a loop of serving them, not you. And your job here, if there is such a thing as called job, is to be here to fulfill for you, which is fulfilling for him. He wants you to have all experience, always ascending. This is going from one to another, to another, to another, where it's a consistent thing. But if you get stuck in a loop, then you don't see much change in your life. Before you know it, you're putting the trash can out again. Before you know it, you're putting the trash can out again. Before you know it, you look back at the year and you're like, oh my gosh, I put the trash can out 52 times. Was there any meaning in that? There's meaning when you stop letting the world fill up your subconscious and start doing it with your objective in mind. Putting the trash cans out quicker becomes the thing because you want to get back to your objective. You want to get back on YouTube, or you want to get back to your book, or you want to get back to the conversation or the conference call you're on, because it's taking you towards your objective, because you've finally realized, I'm shutting this crap off. I'm going for mine. I am going for mine. Do I want to be married? Yes. Then I can be. I need to shut the noise off. Or if there's some things on the outside, like I said, Hallmark Channel is a good thing. If there's some things from without, meaning in the world, that can help bolster your idea, hey, what's wrong with that? Books, TV shows, movies, whatever. Let them be part of your bolstering. I am happily married, in love, with a wonderful husband. We have wonderful children. This is your new concept of self. This is the next one when you go into a house with your children and your new husband. You've got to start by driving the show for what it's worth from you and from your desire. You cannot inherit Christianity. Rather, you adopt it. As you come into its inner conviction, you become cleaner and more noble. I was just saying this exact thing. I didn't mean to do that, Neville. Always trying to take his thunder. When you realize someone has your back, I mean something, it's all consciousness, all that is, God, I am. You're part of something. At first I wanted to say you really cannot manifest consciously until you admit that. But I don't know, because we can sure manifest very well unconsciously, which is what he's been touching on in this chapter. If it's not a sin, because you're not even aware of it. So there's an interesting overlay here about what's happening unconsciously versus consciously. But you cannot inherit Christianity, rather you adopt it. As you come into its inner conviction, like I'm talking about going into the I am, you become cleaner and more noble. Christ taught righteousness in his law of identical harvest, saying, as a man sows, so shall he reap. Taken psychologically, a state of consciousness sown within the mind will be harvested without as external events. Taken psychologically, a state of consciousness sown within the mind will be harvested without as external events. And in like manner, as long as you remain sowing your present state of consciousness, you will continue to encounter similar events in your life. Your current state of consciousness is letting the world and its wares fill up your subconsciousness. When you're letting the world make those impressions, you're just going to repeat this like I just mentioned. Walk conscious of the feeling that your wish is fulfilled, and you will never sin by missing the experience of fulfillment. But you cannot turn away and return to your former state. We are all the prodigal son who went astray. But we are told that when he came to his senses, he turned around and entered his father's house, at which time he was given the fatted calf, the robe, and the ring. Now, that takes on a whole different meaning now, doesn't it? Very wonderful sentence. We are all the prodigal son, I must repeat, who went astray. But we are told that when he came to his senses, he turned around and entered his father's house, at which time he was given the fatted calf, the robe, and the ring. What does that mean but pure abundance? Pure abundance. He came to his senses, turned around, and entered his father's house. He came to his senses, turned around, and entered his father's house. It's very difficult to separate these ideas, no matter what words we use. It's very difficult to separate these ideas from the idea of the fact that we are part of, we are from of, we exist of which we are, from whence we came. Very difficult to embed these ideas, use them practically, learn them, teach them, be them, without taking this massive piece into consideration and embodying it into your manifestation principle. If you know you're in his house, then you know you've always got a home. You know you're not alone. That way you can now then focus on your desire, because you know your back is covered. So now you can focus on your desire, make the subconscious impression, objectify the reality. I am in love, happily married, and life is wonderful. Make that impression. Make the impression. He's got your back. You don't got to worry. He's got your back in that he's always going to fill you with desire. This desire, if you have it, or whatever you have, doesn't matter the difference. As long as you have it, which you're always going to, it's going to be something that's going to itch. It's going to itch. It's going to itch. You just got to scratch it. You just got to scratch it. Things itch must be scratched. All right. Let me see if I'm on the right place. Yes, I am. When you observe who you are in consciousness and come to your senses by turning to your Father, it will be given to you. Turning to your Father is the state desired. In this case, in this sentence, he's saying when you come to your senses and turn to your Father. Now, again, this is also the Son. Remember the conscious and subconscious coming together in the conception through Mary? In this sentence, when you observe who you are in consciousness, now I'm here to tell you that is what he's saying. But he says, when you observe who you are in consciousness and come to your senses by turning to your Father, the state desired, in parentheses, it will be given unto you. Again, where but through your Father is that objectification going to come? Because once you make the impression, it's in the subconscious network, which goes right into all that is Him. I am God. So it's definitely your Father. Then to him that hath, it is given. To him that hath made the impression. To him that hath faith, it is given. Watch your reactions to life, and you will discover where you stand psychologically. If your reactions are unlovely, now remember, he's talking about reactions. It's very interesting because you have to pay attention to how you are reacting all the time to things. You've got to pay attention. What's my reaction right now? Oh, when I got to the register, it cost twice as much than I thought. What's your reaction to that? Oh, when I went out with my girlfriends and we went to a club or bar or dancing or whatever where there was going to be a lot of guys and we were hoping to meet somebody, and we didn't, and in fact it was the complete opposite. It was a bunch of buffoons tried to come and talk to us, but they were idiots, whatever. What is your reaction? You went to the doctor, you're expecting a great blood test result and you didn't get that. What's your reaction? Your reaction dictates your place in that reality that you're forming right there. You must watch your reactions to life and you will discover where you stand psychologically. Now that's currently. If your reactions are unlovely, you are walking in the mud and mire, feeding the swine. But when you turn within to the Father of all life and enter the state you desire by assuming its fulfillment, your actions will be lovely. Persist and you will move out of the mud and mire and enter the kingdom of the wish fulfilled. Persist, and you will enter the kingdom of the wish fulfilled. Persist, persist, persist. I must persist. This is really what you should have on your mind when you fall asleep. I persist. I am that I am. I stake my claim. No one's doing it for you. No one's going to do it for you. There is no such thing as righteous indignation, for the wrath of man cannot work righteousness. Nothing so unlovely as righteous indignation could be right consciousness. Nothing so unlovely as righteous indignation could be right consciousness. My goal is to be one who expands in consciousness, for I am a teacher and I must ever grow as a teacher. My goal is to be one who expands in consciousness. That's what you're always doing. Every time you're making an impression, you're expanding in consciousness because you're becoming the new man. Then the old man dies. This is an expansion in consciousness. My goal is to be one who expands in consciousness, for I am a teacher and I must ever grow as a teacher. This is my aim, and I must remember it morning, noon, and night. I must persist in this state as it externalizes itself in my world. There is a story told of a little blind girl who had 5 brothers. The brothers, trusting their senses, went out into the world. And don't you love Neville's being totally forthright about his main objective? That was an incredible teacher. I mean, incredible statement. And he was an incredible teacher. Is. I'm going to repeat those 2 sentences. Or 3 sentences. They deserve it now. If we can hear him and how he focused on his objective, that should shed some light on how we should focus on our objective. My goal is to be one who expands in consciousness. For I am a teacher and I must ever grow as a teacher. This is my aim and I must remember it morning, noon, and night. I must persist in this state as it externalizes itself in my world. There is a story told of a little blind girl. Well, anyway, let me go back to that. I must persist in this state as it externalizes itself in my world. So you hear Neville even giving himself the business. I must persist because I know it externalizes itself in my world. He knows about the finger pointing business. There is a story told of a little blind girl who had 5 brothers. The brothers, trusting their senses, went out into the world and lost their way, while the little girl, unable to trust her senses, wove a thread of gold. Attaching one end to her finger, she tied the other end to the sun and never lost her way. That's the sun. You too learn to trust the light of consciousness by holding onto the thread that is your aim and not allowing yourself to become enmeshed in the evidence of your senses. The senses are out here. Remembering your desire, you will not get lost like the 5 brothers. That's the 5 senses. As you will not be concerned with what others are doing, but simply walk conscious of being the one you want to be. Remember that kid I told you I saw walking down the street, playing his guitar, walking along the grass? He was staying conscious of what he wanted to be, even though he had to walk. No power can keep you from your goal when you are conscious of already having attained it. Nothing can keep you from that. In fact, you're riding a wave. You're actually literally surfing at this point. When you go on the Sabbath, you're riding the wave. You are told to Seek first the kingdom and its righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. The kingdom of heaven is within you. Turn within and you will find the power to produce what nature and your outer senses deny. Test yourself by controlling your thoughts, by seeing only what you want to see, and hearing only which contributes to the realization that your world is as you want it to be. Test yourself by controlling your thoughts. If some negative thoughts come up about somebody else, stop. Stop it. Stop it right there. Change the thought. No matter how emotionally difficult that seems, you must stop and change the thought. Even if it's that old fake it till you make it concept, even if you think it's a lie, just change it to the positive. Just, even if it doesn't even feel real, the thought, just move it. Until you make this movement, you're going to stay. You're going to stay in this friggin' loop. And you're not coming out, you're not going anywhere. That's hell right there. That's being crucified over and over and over. If you don't stop and change that thought, you're just going to pay that same price over and over, not wondering why. Test yourself by controlling your thoughts, by seeing only what you want to see and hearing only that which contributes to the realization that your world is as you want it to be. Anything that fits where you're going is what you hear. Anything that doesn't, you're the three wise monkeys. You have no comment, you don't even see it, nor do you need to make a comment, and you don't even hear it. So nothing is going to come out of here, so that's covered already when you don't hear it. And when you don't see it, that's covered also. If you don't see it, you're not going to hear it. If you will keep controlling your world in your imagination until the one sensation crowds out all other ideas, your right consciousness will answer for you and your dream will become your reality. And then you'll have a feeling of relief. How's that feel? I got the pizza delivered. But if you don't feel fulfilled, you can easily be diverted and miss your mark. The Bible's teaching is one of rising higher and higher in consciousness until rebirth occurs. There is but one purpose in life, and that is to rise higher and higher on the vertical bar of the cross. Now, he did give us that in a couple chapters ago. He's talking about the vertical line on the cross. Let's put the in my symbols class, in my symbols training in early 1992 or 3, when I was taking another metaphysical study with my teacher, and I'll cover all the metaphysical stuff I've been through and the fun things there. But in the symbols section of what we were learning, what she was teaching me, was that the vertical line equals vertical line equals man, and the horizontal line equals female, and the circle equals God. You can pretty much see we're using all those symbols right here. When she showed me, she said, when you see this symbol, that means man and woman are in balance, which is, the lines are equal. The distance here is the same as the distance here. So that's man and woman in balance. Excuse me. And as she told me, when this line's farther vertical or farther distance than the horizontal line, then that means man, the masculine, is dominant of the feminine. Which I thought was very fascinating at the time, because I immediately, in my own definition of terms, took it to mean that men dominate women, when that's actually not what it means. We're all manifestation. That's the symbol learning I did. But what Neville's saying is the vertical line of this cross is what we must constantly ascend in our experience. That's the reason we're here. All these lines here are when we change from one self-concept to a newer self-concept. We're ascending because we're becoming a desire. We're becoming a dream that we have about ourselves. He's saying that we must consistently keep moving. That's our reason for being here. We must continue to move along this cross vertically. We both know there's no up or down. We both know there's no gravity, or what, I don't know what it is. It's magic. The idea is that we're moving into higher states of consciousness. So this is the vertical, path we're taking. That's our main objective for even being here in the first place. Make sure I got the right place. The Bible's teaching is one of rising higher and higher in consciousness until rebirth occurs. Rebirth. There is but one purpose in life, and that is to rise higher and higher on the vertical bar of the cross. Okay? Knowing the state you desire to express, walk as though you are now expressing it. Remember the guy with the guitar. No man having put his hand to the plow looks back. In other words, once you have moved into the new state, do not look back or you will become as Lot's wife. If you, having a desire to be in love and be happily married, and you get into a situation where you are that, and you start lamenting this old self, why? First, why the heck would you do that? But if you do, you're going to be as Lot's wife, and the salt, she's going to be preserved. When she looked back, she became preserved, meaning stuck. So when she looked back, this is the parable, then she became stuck in the old ways. She looked back and was turned into a pillar of salt, which is a preservative. The moment you look back at your former state, you re-enter it. As all states exist, preserved in your imagination and ready for occupancy. Think about what he just said. Once you make this change from this self-concept, old self, old state, you make the impression to become this new state, all states are ready for occupancy, including the one you left. All these are available to you now. Now that you're here, you have a plethora of states available. But if you had any kind of struggle to get out of this one, there's no way, logically, you should even consider that one. But habit is what habit is. We have habits. We sometimes don't want to let go of this one. There's some things in there. There's some emotional experiences. I want to keep those. Those define me as who I am. Well, your mission is not that. You're here not to be that consistent repeating on a same cycle. Your mission is to rise. Your mission is to rise up the vertical line of the cross, consistently becoming the new man. The moment you look back at your former state, you re-enter it. Once you look back at it, you re-enter it. As all states exist, preserved in your imagination and ready for occupancy. Best thing to do is just see a no vacancy sign, a nice bright neon sign when you leave a state, and you know when you leave a state because you feel completely different. You feel the detachment, as I've described before. We'll get into that separately, but it's a wonderful subject. We're going to expand later on that. Once you know you've left a state, you know you've left a state. And you need to do everything in your power to be in occupation of the new state and flourish in that new state and make every definition new, not old. The kingdom of heaven is a higher state of awareness, a step above where you now stand. And each higher level is reached by a change of attitude for the better. Change of attitude for the better. There is not a problem that cannot be resolved by a change of consciousness. I want to be healthy. I want to be in love. I want to be, I want to be healthy. I want to be in love, and I want to be healthy, wealthy, and in love. Healthy, wealthy, and wise. There is no state that's not attainable. It doesn't matter your situation. It doesn't matter your limitation. It doesn't matter where you are in the whole world. There is not a problem that cannot be resolved by a change of consciousness. And that which requires a state of awareness to produce its effect can never be affected without that state. It is the height of folly to expect security while being conscious of insecurity. On the other hand, you cannot be insecure if you walk conscious of being secure. If in your current reality you are insecure, but you start to walk consciously of being secure, and you're making that impression, you can't be insecure. In fact, you're already here. You don't have to pull strings to get what you want. All you need to do is walk in the consciousness of already having it. For an assumption, though false, if persisted in, will harden into fact. Don't try to be a better man, but try to be a better at something. Most metaphysical students have no aim, claiming God knows best. But I ask you, how can this be when you and God, your Father, are one? Most metaphysical students have no aim. Oh boy. I've spent years down that road. It's like back in the Matrix when he's opening the door of that what was that? A Lincoln Town Car, I think, with the suicide doors. He was trying to get out. Suicide, get it? Probably a special reason they chose that car. He was trying to get out, and she said, "You've been down that road, Neo." Yes, that road. Don't want that one anymore. Let's go towards the red pill. Most metaphysical students have no aim, claiming God knows best. But I ask you, how can this be when you and God, your Father, are one? Human nature wants the thing to come first with the belief to follow. Oh, just give me the lottery winning first. Then I can figure out how to change consciousness. Right. We know the story of Jack Whitaker. I think his name's Jack Whitaker. Let me know if I messed that up. Wonderful man. Wonderful man. He had a construction business. I think his net worth was about 12 million. I linked it in one of my previous videos. He won the 315 million approximately lottery, just him, and proceeded to spend and abuse and do everything in his power just to waffle through the money. And his experiences were, a couple deaths in his family, and including one was his granddaughter, whom he loved dearly, and she fell heavily into drugs. And a lot of this experience with the money for him went awry because of the consciousness wasn't ever approached as a thing, or any other big picture ideas for the man at the time. I think he left us a wonderful example of without consciousness. So having the thing first, human nature, and then trying to deal with the consciousness change later, Human nature wants the thing to come first with belief to follow. You want to be wealthy, and you're trying to make that impression, and you get this lottery ticket, and it's in here, but the impression's not made. And you're all of a sudden this new man with the money, but guess where you're going to slip to? You're going to slip right down here. You're going to be right back where you started. Even though your pocket's full, you're still here. Your consciousness didn't change. So how you would deal with your money and finances here is how you would deal with it anywhere else. So when I'm speaking of him personally, he's an angel to us all to learn from. When he did that, all the experiences, and if you look up the video or any video about him, you can see the trials and tribulations. And this happens to a lot of lottery winners. They're exactly doing the thing come first with the belief to follow. But I'm here to tell you, the idea is consciousness first. The thing's destined to follow. It cannot not happen. The wave is already formed and it's already headed your way once you make this impression. But I say you must assume the consciousness of already having, or being, in parentheses, your desire before the sign that you have it can appear. Signs follow, they do not precede. Seek the conscious feeling of having already reached your goal, and the sign that you have reached it will follow. End of chapter. Wow, what a wonderful chapter. Righteousness. Previously, he talked about righteousness. He took it up an octave. Previously, he talked about righteousness as the law of assumption, and how just being aware of its path is righteousness. Using the law of assumption is how we apply the impression, and then it begets the objective reality. And then being aware of that path is righteousness. And he just took it to a whole nother octave right here, which I thought was wonderful. So many great bits in this one, especially this piece here. Most metaphysical students have no aim, claiming God knows best. I'm going to let go and let God. You know, there's two ways to use that. One way is I'm going to let go and let God. He'll guide me. And then you just sit back waiting for waiting for the phone to ring. Well, and you didn't do anything. You didn't even think anything. Then there's the other path where let go and let God is the way you're using it here. You're letting go of your old self to become your new self, and you're making the impression, and you're letting God, because He is you. But when you're aware of this, that's different than not being aware of it, which is what he started off the chapter with. You're seeing if you're aware and you're not doing. You're not applying, but you're not seeing when you don't even have any conscious awareness of it. Wonderful chapter. Oh my goodness. That was, again, chapter 5, righteousness out of the power of unlimited imagination. And we're going to see you in the next chapter.